What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of the LA Report, starring your co-hosts Eris Morrison and Linjo Kilo.
Yes, sir. We are here, bro. We back.
We are back for another episode. We appreciate you guys for rocking with us. Today we got a special guest on the show, fellow chapter brother of ours, Randy Ricks.
How's it going?
Randy, I'm gonna get a floor to you really quick, man, just to kind of give the people, let them know what your background is and a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Randy Ricks. I'm a graduate of the University of District of Columbia with a master's. Bachelor's of biology. Just a recent graduate of Charles University with a master's of biomedical science, and I'm working on a master's of public health as of right now. And I have a very strong passion for health, community health, especially. I was introduced to health disparities while at UDC, and while I was there, really my eyes were really open taking a health disparities course in how adverse the Black community's health is versus the rest of the population in comparison to our population in America. And that's one reason I actually chose to go to Charles University, because they address directly the health disparity problem within socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. And that's a very strong passion of mine, the health and equity that we face. And I feel like it's very rare for the mainstream academia to address health disparities as they really are with conditions such as social and community factors that we face. And so that's just a little bit about myself, and where my passion stems from, and what I really plan to do is to address health within the community from a equity standpoint. As in, I believe that it's really hard to reach health standards without wealth standards being met as well. So we need to really find a way to bridge the gap between wealth and health, because I believe they're very concomitant together in, achieving both of them.
Most definitely, man. So we appreciate that, Randy. So on today's episode, we'll do a recap of episode 3 and some of the obviously the riots that are going on, the injustice that's been going on, and obviously the situation and the sad passing, murder of George Floyd. And then from there, we'll be going right into talking with Randy about how we kind of manage our stress loads, specifically what he was talking about, some of the disparities that us as African Americans face from a health standpoint. And then we're talking about obviously what's been going on over this past week and how we can kind of minimize those effects on us, and especially with us still dealing with COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. I think it's very important that, we have this conversation because, a lot of people are, upset or in their emotions, but I think it's very important that we find ways to open up our eyes a little bit more and be aware of how we manage our stress, because our stress plays a huge role in our health outcomes, especially for Black people, as Randy mentioned before, our health, Eric's mentioned before, our health disparities, the health disparity in our community is so vast compared to other communities that when we have things like this, when we see people like George Floyd murdered, and we see the protests and stuff like that, it can put us more at risk for poor health outcomes. So we're here to try to shed light on that and try to give people a different perspective on how they should move forward, especially during this time in our country.
Most definitely. And so right now we'll get right into the recap of last week's episode, or this past Sunday's episode. Obviously, we discussed the madness, the pandemic, and going on in this country, that's been going on in this country for a very long time. The fear of Black and brown people in America, and the injustice that occurs with the killings of unarmed Black people. And obviously, right now, everybody knows that America's tensions are pretty high. Everything is in a different state of affairs that we haven't seen things in a very long time. And we just kind of want to just touch back on what we've seen over this weekend and kind of our thoughts and how we kind of move forward from the riots and the protests to like what actionable steps we need to take to really make this movement something successful long term.
Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. I think kind of funny. I saw in an article, I think it was the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, and they were saying that this we haven't been in this kind of affairs in our country since 1968 when Martin Luther King was assassinated,
Mm.
and they were saying that in terms we're not in this kind of response in terms of like the police response and a military response to these different cities to combat the protesters or at least show face to the protesters. And I think that's interesting because everything that's happening now is happening. The timing is almost impeccable. You feel what I'm saying? Like at a time where people are already in the house. You feel what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? We have the highest unemployment rate that we've had since the Depression era.
Mm-hmm.
You feel? And then we have another a black man murdered, unjustly. Another unarmed black man murdered unjustly. So all of these things, and on top of that, we have COVID-19. So all of these things it's like a perfect storm that's coming together. That is, I guess, starting of it seems like a revolution when it comes to what's going on.
Most
So
definitely.
it's very 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 interesting times, man. I think this right here is going to go down in history. I think no one will forget 2020 and everything that it has brought, especially for black people, man. Losing one of our black heroes, in Kobe Bryant, and hopping into COVID-19 with
Mm-hmm.
all the health experience and the black deaths, and now hopping into George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and amongst probably other black people that were murdered that their names are not being said.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a perfect storm right now, and I think it's very important that we be present in the moment, but yet understand how we can better our future. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, man.
I feel I
Now, go
feel
ahead.
like at this point in time, you can look at 2020 as, if we use it right, it can be considered growing pains. Like it's a lot of terrible things going on, but if we all come together and use this for what it has potential to be used for, and that's why I say potential. It's a dangerous word, potential to be used for. It could be a growing pain, and we can actually come out of this. I feel like stronger than we ever have been before as a community, as a Black community. Because I feel like right now it's just so much awareness being brought to it that people can't really get away from. One reason is because of COVID-19, how everybody's kind of just still concentrated in their households watching the news anyway, and it's just a really concentrated situation that if used right, it could be a catalyst for growing pains and for us to really um, capture our freedom, you know.
Mm.
Big facts. And I think the protests this weekend, if nothing else, have been good just to see more and more white folk out there using their privilege to kind of combat this injustice. I mean, there's no way to measure um, what they really feel in their hearts, but just being out there on the front lines with us, showing their support, I think that means actually a lot more because what people got to come to realize is that nothing is going to hurt and kill a white supremacist like faith more so than seeing their children and grandchildren out there screaming Black Lives Matter.
Mm,
I think that that's a very powerful thing, and we have to understand that we're not really looking to change like white people's hearts and minds of like the older generation. Like they've been successful on building this infrastructure of putting black folks down. So what we really need is this next generation, our generation of white allies, and their children as they grow up to understand that this is not going to be tolerated and that this is wrong. And I just think that those protests this weekend, if nothing else, did a good job of that. I mean, like I said, it's not all white folks. We understand that, but I mean, I think just having those images out there at the very least was something positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I totally agree with that, bro. You know, a lot of people, even myself included, you know what I'm saying, we've definitely been critical of our white counterparts, But like you said, man, we definitely need them in this fight. You feel what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, we are the minority. So, our voices can only go so
Mm.
far in terms of like applicable action. You feel what I'm saying? Yes, we can tear shit down, we can break shit up. All that is fine and dandy, but if we don't follow that shit up with, actionable items like voting, for example, then it means nothing. You know what I'm saying? And, like I said before, we are the minority. There's more white folks than black folks
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So we can get folks to be on our side to at least understand and consider our issues, especially when they go into these voting booths, then we can have a lot more success down the line. And like you said, Randy, this is the perfect time for us to capture the moment, go through these growing pains, get on the same page as the
Right.
people, so that we can grow and have better outcomes for our children and our children's children. You feel what I'm saying? Because like MLK said before, he has a dream, and that dream still has to go on. You feel what I'm saying? We have a responsibility to carry out that dream. You feel what I'm saying? So I feel like this is a perfect time to do so.
Right. And
Yes.
I feel like what you just mentioned about our children and our children's children is like a perfect segue into what I was going to talk about tonight as far as allostatic load of stress and
Yeah.
how that pertains to our current condition. I don't know if the 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 listeners out there are familiar with the Willie Lynch syndrome. Okay, so Willie Lynch, as far as my research goes, that was a fictitious letter, but it was developed to show the tactics that were used to control slaves. Okay, so those tactics used um, the division, the divide and conquer tactics, the tactics to actually cause embarrassment and basically to cause a stress amongst the people. Um, those things we still suffer from to this day. And through some of the research that I've done, you look at this one example of basically research done by Michael Meany and Moshe Schiff at McGill University. They basically this is a experiment done using of course an animal model, which is a rat, and they did this experiment by basically exposing offspring of these rats to stressful situations, right? And the way they replicated stress was to they had one generation of rats that were able to receive maternal care from their mother, and another generation that was not able to receive maternal care from their mother. And so, not being able to receive maternal care from their mother, obviously, as a child on or a offspring of any uh, organism, if you're not able to receive maternal care, that will put you in a stressed out state. You know, so that's how they were able to replicate stress in this animal model. So after they did that, they actually saw that these stressed out these rats that were not able to receive maternal care had a lower level of cortisol receptors in the brain. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone, right? So when you experience stress, whether it be allostatic load, so allostatic, okay, we keep using that word and throwing it around. Okay, I'm gonna break that down real quick, what that actually is, because I don't want to just keep throwing terms around for our listeners and they might not, totally grip what it is. So allostatic load of stress is basically a residual stress that one experiences that's not necessarily we call it overt. So basically, it's the stress you experience that you might not be consciously knowing to experience. Like maybe if you experience something that scares you right away, you get um, you get noticeably afraid, right? But having allostatic load is something that, okay, it's a stress that you experience from the knowledge of some potential of something happening that you might not be addressing. So, for instance, when we see all these murders and of black men on TV, and knowing that any encounter that we come into with a police officer could possibly end in our death, or our loved ones could possibly encounter a police officer or and end up possibly in their death. This is the residual allostatic load of stress that we walk around with on a constant day-to-day basis, and this stress raises our cortisol levels. It might be a small amount, but our cortisol levels as black men in America, which is the stress hormone, is at a constant raised state. Okay, so I digress back to the experiment done with the rat models being stressed out. So this stress in this generation of rats that were experiencing no maternal care, when they actually were grown into development, they had susceptibility to um, to basically be more timid and more afraid, and also susceptibility to they had more susceptibility to be more timid and afraid. Now, when these rats had offspring, the ones that were experiencing the higher stress levels from low maternal care, their offspring were susceptible to what you call a thrifty phenotype, which means that their offspring carried on a residual effects from them having a stressful experience in their youth. So this is able to be shown to be passed down generation by generation of having this allostatic load stress and stressful situations. And that's where the root of health disparities for Black people in general is really coming from. I mean, we've had allostatic load and overt stress for 400 plus years in America. That's what a lot of people refer to as the Willie Lynch syndrome, as in, why are we constantly finding ourselves in this state of self hatred for one another, and black on black crime, which is, it is a direct result of 400 years of basically being taught to hate ourselves, to go out here and try to change ourselves, to assimilate. We've been assimilating for so many years, not necessarily getting equal respect, but trying to fit in to the majority qualities and aspects. So I just think that's important to address, of how, from birth, basically in utero, we're in the womb, from our mothers experiencing the stress loads, from our grandmothers and our ancestors experiencing stress. These stressors are able to be tracked through our genetics, but it's not necessarily in our DNA. It's upon a DNA called epigenetics and the epigenome outside of, so our children can change, though, because they noticed once they did this experiment, they are actually able to reverse these stressors on the epigenome by changing the environment. The offspring that were from the stressed out generation, which you call like the F1 generation, they were able to reverse this by putting them into the other offspring into environments that were able to nurture and provide a less stressful environment, which actually reduced the stress levels and cortisol levels. They were able to rebound and actually reverse in the future generations, and after two subsequent generations, to basically put them back at the rat models at a baseline of stress levels, to actually reverse it. So this is a reversible state that we're in right now. It's going to take policy change. It's going to take a change of mindset to address what is actually causing this plight of black men in America, and the black plight and the black burden in America right now. And that's going to take policy adjustment by, I think it's going to start with all of us, in a way we're going to have to vote and who we want to actually lead us. I know I just said a lot to say a little, but I just want to get that. When you said children's children and our generation upon generations, at the root of all of this started from being put into these stressful environments, but it actually is reversible once we realize what the root cause is, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. I definitely appreciate you for giving that thorough explanation, man. That's definitely good that you brought that up, bro. And it's definitely good that you mentioned that this can be reversed, because I think a lot of people, when they hear stuff like this, they automatically think it's like a death
Right.
sentence. They think like, oh, this is something that we are subjected to, and it can't
Mm-hmm.
change. You feel me? It's like how people feel how voting can't change, the condition of our people. But like with anything else, everything else takes time. You feel what I'm saying? Like, of course, we're not gonna vote for a president or vote for a mayor in his next election is going to change the entire outlook of Black folks
Right.
now. But the consistent monitoring of our political stronghold, and that's how we're going to get real
Right.
change. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, it starts with the youth. If we can catch the youth, and give them enough game that they can go into the world having a different kind of mindset and outlook on their potential, then of course we're going to have different outcomes for our children. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And that's really the big thing. I think people take voting and look at it kind of selfishly. You know what I'm saying? I think voting and controlling the political landscape is not just for us now in the present day. It's for us, you know, and our children 25 years from now, 30 years from
Right.
now. You feel what I'm saying?
And changing little by
Most
little.
definitely.
You know what I mean? It's not a overnight just going to do it one big, hoorah. It's just little by little, and it starts one vote at a time, one different elected official at a time, with a broader, better outlook than the last.
Yeah, definitely, bro. And I think that's the kind of thing. It's kind of like how Aaron mentioned last episode, how a lot of things happen. Like, Black folks, our attention spans are so short that, okay, yes, we're gonna protest, we're gonna make hashtags, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
forget about it in a month. We're gonna protest, we're gonna break windows, and we're not gonna vote tomorrow. We're gonna do all these things and not be consistent with it enough to bring upon that
Mm-hmm.
change. You feel me? So for a white supremacist society, that we're fighting against, they understand
Mm-hmm.
that too. They're like, okay, we'll lose this battle. We'll lose our target. We'll lose our auto zone. But I know for a month from now they're gonna forget, and we're gonna be right back to where
Yep.
we were. But as Black, we have to understand, we have to be consistent with our
Mm-hmm.
ideals. You know what I'm saying? Anything worth having, you have to be consistent at it for a long period of time. Nothing comes
Right.
overnight, man. And so
Most,
we have the understanding that we can definitely have better outcomes.
yeah, man. And just to what you guys are saying, the the point that has to be made, it's obvious, is, in order to have this change occur, there has to be a fundamental shift and change in the structure of this country, right? Like, though the protests and riots that have been going on is really just part of America's karma for the last 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is just going to have to be through policy, legislation, economic development. Those are the ways in which Black folks are going to have to be able to come out of this situation much better than we did. And like I said, it's not just Black folks. It is just us, but it's not just us in terms of making this
Mm-hmm.
change. As Black people, as chicks would say, Black folk, we have like big dick energy, right? Like we give this energy as if we're a majority, and we're not. We're a minority, so we have to solicit the help of other people. And so we have to use that same energy, that swagger, that confidence in order to put, not because every position that we make a step forward is not going to just be solely a Black person taking that step forward. It might be a Black person with a white person or Asian person or whatever. The point is having an agenda and specific objectives that we are getting taken seriously with and implemented to where we see these changes. Like 99 years ago today was the massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of the Black Wall Street. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the ideal time when Black folks had a lot of like we that was black. It was Black Wall Street. We had businesses,
Excuse
communities
me.
were thriving, money was in circulation in a very profound way that was leading to economic change. And that was torn down and shredded from us. And so we haven't recovered from a situation like that. And that not recovering from that situation right there, almost 100 years ago today, is why we feel, the stress loads of what you were discussing, Randy, with these health benefits and these health outcomes, because people are stressed. They don't have jobs. People have been sitting in the house since March. There's a lot of factors, and we're still talking about obviously dealing with COVID-19, to where this is another virus, another respiratory disease that is taking us out, and people don't even realize that the amount of stress that this weekend has just caused
Mm-hmm.
on everybody, just the mental and emotional and physical stress, that actually weakens your immune system, and that it makes you more susceptible to viruses and other bacteria and diseases when your body is that level of stress. And so, this whole weekend, obviously people weren't social distancing in this case for a really great cause and benefit, but people should be very mindful of what you were saying in terms of understanding this stress environment that we've obviously been through, which is why we are predominantly more affected with COVID-19 than other races, but also just in dealing with this weekend alone.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But one thing I feel like that keeps happening, and I feel like a lot of people might not like what I'm about to say, but I feel like the um, black movement, black equality, equality for us, it gets so convoluted by everybody else pretty much piggybacking on with us. Like I think it needs to be a time that we need to just say like, yes, gay rights and you know, Hispanic, what do you call it, immigrant rights and all these other people's rights. Yes, they are important, but I feel like they always get piggyback on with us, and it's like we can never really have a movement solely by ourselves. It's like everybody else got to try to get on, with us. And yes, one nobody's free until um, everyone is free, any individual is free. But I just think we need to like literally isolate this movement just for Black people, and no, we can't do it by ourselves without, everybody being on board with it. But we need to realize it's almost like when everybody says like the all lives matter thing. That statement right there makes me so angry, because we all clearly know all lives matter. We all clearly know that everyone deserves equality and should be have the freedom to live uninhibited. But I feel like so many times our movement gets dulled by everybody else trying to jump along with it, or we have to include everybody with us in order to just say that we want equality for Black people and Black people specifically. Not saying Black people only, but this is something just for Black people right now, you know.
I agree with you. I think to that point, I think this past, like I said, I think this particular movement right now that's
Mm,
going on is probably more or less geared towards that. With regards to this is how Black people like this whole protest this week and the riots that have broken out. This is in response to how Black people have been feeling for years. Like this is all this pent up, and I think that this movement specifically is more so talking about how we feel as solely as Black folk. I do agree with you that we, sometimes those different movements get lumped in. But what I will say is, even when you look at,
mm,
LBGTQ community, like and other ones, they have done something that as Black folk, I'm hoping again. comes out of this is mobilization of plans. Like, you have to be able to mobilize. You have to move strategic. Whenever you move with
Mm,
emotion, you don't move with a clarity, clarity of mind. And without that clarity of mind, you're not going to be able to focus on the target. And strategy is all about accomplishing goals. It doesn't matter what happens as long as the goal is obtained and goal is reached. And the goal right now for black folks in this country is equality and the promise that America has been claiming that she has given us for over 400 years. And the problem with that is, as black folks, we have to understand that then again, we talked about this in last Sunday's episode. We can't worry about the nuances of how we get there because every black person has a way that they feel like they can achieve this goal. We have to come together with
mm,
basic principles and basic beliefs to be able to put into play and basic plans of action that is going to lead to this. Because again, none of this is going to happen overnight. I think we all can agree and attest that we've seen how long it takes. But the problem with this is, again, the only way that things are really going to change with this country is to tear down the current structure. And the way you tear down the current structure is you have to get more people in power that look like us and think like us. And the only way that's going to happen is is playing the political game. Um, we need to put more of us in powers of and political power. And we need to understand that again, even if it's not us as black folks specifically in political power, the white people that if the white or Hispanic or whoever else, gay, lesbian, don't matter, whoever those representatives will be because people vote them in as that's what the game is. Because again, the game has always been voting. Who they need to understand that black folks, we have an agenda in place, and these are things that we need to rebuild our community in order for us to thrive. I mean, it's just really that simple. Like again, people forget like Barack Obama was president for 2 terms, 8 years. This man played the game and won twice. He showed you it's a blueprint. So everybody has to understand that the blueprint to success is there. A black man was in the White House, no matter what anybody wants to say. So we know that that's possible. He was in the highest power seat in the world. Now we just need to fill more of those seats underneath the power seat with us to be able to implement legislation and changes that are going to put money into our economy for black folks and to just put in place laws that won't allow shit like this to continuously take place
mm.
unpunished.
It's 100% facts, man. I personally couldn't have said it any better, man. I mean, like Aaron said, man, the game, the blueprint out there, man. We have to, as a community, have to follow that blueprint. I feel like a lot of people make things harder than what it has to be, and that's not just with, you know, things going on like now. That goes on like even the simplest things, like like let's say sports. Like there is a blueprint to success in terms of how to improve your skill, how to improve your performance, on the court, on the field, whatever. I think people make things seem more difficult than they really are by adding all these different variables. You know what I'm saying? And next thing you know, you're having a thing I like to call analysis paralysis, where you're doing all the study and all the research and all this, but you're missing the action. You see what I'm saying? And really, the action is simple, especially when it comes to this game that we're playing now in politics, man.
And
Just gotta vote, man. It's the
I
first step.
feel you, but on the contrary, the blueprint. Okay, if you really want to look at the blueprint, I feel like we as Americans with this democracy thing and trying to be politically correct, and do all this like, kind of strategic political movement. We've been really trying to do to some degree some political movement for a while, but the real blueprint to obtain freedom and respect that has been going on for around the world since anything can really start, man. And it's sad to say this, but it's really war, bro. Like since I've been alive, we bombed somebody at least, and I'm just on the light end. We bombed somebody like one time at least since I've been alive a year, and that's on the light end. What when I look at it, it's more than that. We bomb people countless of times a year. You know, I feel like America has everybody in America programmed to see everybody else is our enemy. You know, but when you look at what's been going on with Black people, they won't allow us to identify anybody as our enemy. You know, and not saying go out here and do something crazy like bomb somebody or do something terroristic, but at the end of the day, I feel like we've been basically. I feel like it's the process of getting our freedom has been made more complicated by having to follow all of these rules that America has made up on how we should go about getting it, um, and what we can identify as an enemy or not. Yet they'll readily go out and send people to war at a drop of a hat, throw a bomb on somebody at the drop of a hat. You know, but it's being made more complicated because we got to do it the peaceful way. We have to do it the political way and strategically move like games of chess and all this and that. But at the end of the day, like how much longer we have to do this game of chess that, you know, nobody really gave us the rule book to, but yet you can go and get yours how you feel like getting it. You know what I mean? And like I feel like that's the conundrum that we're caught in and trying to like play the game by the rules that they have given us to make it basically more complicated to get what we need, which is the political way and voting and doing this and that, or really going out and taking it. Like I feel like if we went and took it, you know, it would be a disaster. Of course, it would be something nobody wants to see happen. But how much longer are we going to have to play this strategic game of chess that is so complicated? The rules are not made by us. These rules are made by people who want you to stay in the situation you're in. Like the laws and bylaws are complicated. We have to read like a lot and go and get law degrees and to understand the language that they use to tangle us into. Bro, just treat us equally. Give us respect, and we'll give you respect. But the game has been made very, very complicated trying to play it politically, and I feel like that's the another plight that we live in. Honestly, that's making it so hard for us to really, really get our freedom and respect, man. And like, it's just really complicated by rules of engagement that the people, the systems and powers that be that create the rules of engagement, created them to be that way so that they can use and manipulate them when they so choose to and how they choose to. You know what I mean?
So, what do you suggest? Because you mentioned how black folks we should just take it, and how you compared how America bombs other countries, and I think, um, and you also said that we've been playing the game for years, which if we look at this at the numbers, we haven't been. Black black votership has been low. You feel what I'm saying? So no, we haven't been playing the game with America. Number one, number two, it's kind of unfair to compare the foreign agendas of America with the black plight, because you know America is going to do what they want despite of whether black folks are here or not. They're going to bomb countries regardless. So I can't really take what they do internationally and apply that to our homeland stuff. And then thirdly, I mean, what else do you
My
suggest us,
suggestion, like
us
you
to?
said, I
I
wouldn't
mean,
just come up with a complaint and not have a solution. You know, that's really not what great thinkers do. You know, but I was comparing that to show you that how as black people in America, we, in order for us to go forward, we have to identify what are we going forward against, what is and who is our enemy. Obviously, if we're getting killed and slain in the streets, unequally treated, unfairly treated, we have an enemy. Okay, so when I made that comparison is that if America on a foreign scale can identify an enemy, when will black people identify an enemy? When we are being attacked. We are being attacked. We're being brutalized. We're being slain at will. So when I say when I did that comparison, I'm saying we need to identify an enemy to go against that enemy uniformly. That's the first step. So to uniformly go against that enemy, I think that, to be honest, we need to totally separate ourselves as a nation within a nation. I do agree with separation, as in until we are equally treated, until we can be fairly treated, let's band together and have our own, like we did before the civil rights movement. We had black hospitals, black schools, black everything. You know, if we can come together like the Black Wall Street, We need to come together and do that. Forget playing the political game, this and that. We need to make our own. Separate, I really believe, completely until you're able to give us our respect. We don't have nothing to do with you. And I feel like until we can come to that stance, instead of trying to politically assimilate into their system, as in a game that they created that we really would never win. At the end of the day, we can win it, but as you can see, they cheat that system so many times. In America, we've seen George Bush cheat, we've seen Trump cheat, we've seen Hillary Clinton cheat. Like this system is not something you can really fairly play and say you're gonna get and win the game, because they do what they want to do with it.
Okay. So you're saying that we should, separate and create,
A black economy.
I guess you say, like you said,
Yes.
a nation within a nation, and creating a black. Right. I agree with you. I think separation. If we never separated, we never integrated, rather, we will be in a better state. That's the reality that we're living in. Number one. Number two, I think, like, yes, the ideal of having black separation is great. I agree with you 100%. But the reality is this: if we want to create our own black nation, our own black community, then we have to have some type of political stronghold, because the bottom line is, who controls our money, who controls our land, and how do we get control of that if we're not representing the seats that have a say in, the lawmaking within our community? You know what I'm saying? How could we possibly say, okay, we're going to have a nation within a nation if we cannot control the land that we want to live on? You feel what I'm saying? We cannot control the tax base for our businesses. We cannot control the tax base for our real estate if they're controlled by white folks. I guess you say the enemy, the white man, for sake of argument. You feel what I'm saying? I feel like all the ideals that you mentioned, I'm with you 100%. But we have to take a more sophisticated look into how we can apply that realistically, because if not, we're going to be left short-handed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. I do see what you're saying. It's like basically, like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. To a certain degree, we are going to have to deal with the system as far as you say, like taxes and different things like that. But at the end of the day, we only use their money because we choose to. We have enough people in America that we could have our own system of trade, whether it be money or cryptocurrency or some other fashion of barter or trade. It's like there is a way to totally separate ourselves from we wouldn't have to depend on them. And when I say this is the thing, I really don't like, okay, as far as the enemy of Black America, I wouldn't necessarily say it is solely the white man. I think the enemy of Black America, and has been the enemy of Black America since the start of America, is it's on the tip of my tongue. It's basically this enemy is in all countries. What I'm trying to say is yeah.
Bro, get your thoughts.
Basically how when you live communally, when you live off of basically able to live with one another. Yeah. Consumerism, man. Consumerism, and basically the reality that we live in as far as imperialism, the imperialistic system. That's what it is. When basically we're able to use someone to obtain what we want. Basically, instead of living like on an equal level, as in everyone should be able to everyone might not hunt, but everyone is able to still eat at the table. But in America, you have this imperialistic system, as in where like the rich stay rich and get richer, while they utilize and use everyone beneath them to just obtain and extract and extract and extract. and that's how slavery was. That's what slavery was all about. Slavery was an economy. It was economy based. So this economy that we live in to extract from the poor, it just so happened that you have to have someone to be poor to extract from. You have imperialistic systems all over America, not just by color. These imperialistic systems are by the wealthy. Like you have in China, you look at these sweatshops and these factories and stuff that people are basically relegated to make these little cents on a dollar, while you have these big conglomerates in China getting rich. They're facing the same kind of thing that we're facing, but it's not by color, it's by the imperialistic economy. You see what I'm saying? So that is our real enemy at the end of the day. It's not necessarily the white man and the man this and that. It's more so it's the economy that we live in to extract from the poor to help the rich get richer. You see what I mean? So that's what I was trying to say. I kind of I had to really think about what that word was that I was looking for. But that's our enemy right now. More so than just the white man.
Okay. Okay. So let me get this straight. Okay. So yes, our enemy is imperialism, and like you said in theory, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Of course, and the poor in this case is black folks, right? And you mentioned before how black people, our black community, we have enough, I guess, resources where we can totally separate ourselves and have our own economy where we use, like, for example, a cryptocurrency and stuff like that. Um, you know, I, I just want to understand how we want to make that a reality, the condition that we live in now, because um, not every black, I'll say this, probably the majority of black folks don't have enough US dollars to get access to cryptocurrency, unless you mean creating our own black cryptocurrency, which at that point is like, how do we regulate who gets what?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? How do we determine how we start that kind of economy? I think, like again, all the theories, all the ideas are great. I just think when it comes down to the reality and really implementing them, that's where we, run into some pitfalls, or we run into some hiccups, because all that sounds good, but then how are we going to get that done?
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? So my question to you is, how would you suggest starting, a new black economy?
Well, one is, like I said, I think the first step would be to identify our enemy, and our enemy is the economy that we live in. So once we have that, what economy, and then this would take, I feel like, black leaders coming together, great black minds coming together to figure out what type of economy would we want to live in as a people. What will we want to see the people? Will we want to see people at the top just able to make a whole lot of money? Like, to be honest, I feel like for there to be billionaires in America and the world with all the, with poverty the way it is, I feel like that is very selfish. It's very selfish to say I'm a billionaire or a trillionaire and you have, people out here going hungry. Like that, to me, I feel like nobody needs $1 billion. So okay, going forward, it definitely going to take some thinking through. But once we identify an enemy, I feel like that's the closer step that we get to actually solving the problem of what do we want to see for ourselves versus thrown into trying to assimilate to the system that they've already created, that the system they created is for their benefit. And I say their benefit, the economy's benefit, which just so happen to be the majority, and the majority so happen to be white. But these people, this economy type of economy is all over the world. It's an imperialistic system, and just sucking the poor dry and just utilizing that. So we wouldn't want to be a part of that. Find some type of way that we can evenly distribute, wealth amongst us. I feel like as black people, we can go back to our real roots, of how basically a tribe would necessarily live, as in, like, yes, there's a chief, but necessarily the chief doesn't have more than everyone else. The chief just is a director of the group, but everyone has an equal thing. Now, some people might say those communism and fascism and all this and that, but we've been told to look at that and demonize those type of ideologies, where people can live equally.
Well,
So I would say this much. I would say that, being a spiritual person like myself, I'm not sure what our listeners are. And, everyone has different various beliefs. I think it's important to note that if you are spiritual, you kind of recognize that you can't expect heaven on earth. There's not an ideal way that earth is going to be set up in a way that is going to be fair to all. That's just reality. That's like not, not trying to disperse the idea that people should be treated fairly and equally, but in terms of people having equal possessions, equal amounts of money,
Right.
it's just not ideal. I think that capitalism is a beautiful thing in this country, and I think again we got to be careful because the reason why white America fears black folks is because they already know how dominant of a race we can and we are. So they knock you off because they see already the intelligence, the ability to adapt. That's what we've been doing since we've been here, right? So you're talking about slavery, right? And then you're talking about from slavery, like I mentioned earlier in the show, 99 years ago today, we had the massacre of Black Wall Street. So when you talk about us not necessarily being able to capture, quote, the American dream to an extent, we did that in the 1920s. We just haven't been able to reclaim and recapture that. And some might say that's because the game is rigged. I will argue because as Black folk, when you mention the dichotomy, like with Chinese people making cents on the dollar and corporations making big money, Black folks have done a very great job of succeeding and accumulating a great amount of wealth. While it's not a lot of us at the top, there is a blueprint for us to reach the top. And I think that the sad reality that we're having to talk about is that not every Black person in America is going to reach that status of being able to say they've made
Yeah.
it. And that's okay because to be honest with it, not every Black person, just like not every white person, just like not every Hispanic person puts in that same amount of work
Mm-hmm.
to say that they've been able to make it. And so you got to be able to, when you talk about, like, I'm a capitalist all the way. I believe that again, the beautiful thing about America, even while she has her many flaws and her karma, is that the market does not give a fuck about your
Mm-hmm.
color when it comes down to business, when it comes down to what you can bring to the table. If what you bring to the table has value, you will get paid off of it. Period. It don't matter. This is why you look at our athletes when we talk about why every Black boy or Black girl wants to necessarily be a basketball player, football player, or a rapper. It's because their talent, they have something that will bring in and generate an enormous amount of income that wouldn't be possible otherwise. And so we have to again be careful to again we denounce racism and bigotry and white supremacy that sifted through America, but we got to be sure to understand that America has a lot of positives only in the context of us being able to come up. And we can't forget that because there's many examples throughout history of us as Black folks being down from where we were and our ability to come up. So again, I'm not against what necessarily what you're saying, and I appreciate you bringing up your points because, like, that's the point of our show. That's the point of this podcast to have different perspectives and dialogue, to be able to listen and to
Right.
empathize and understand where one is coming from, and to see what can be as far as just because I don't necessarily agree with it, it doesn't mean I don't understand where you're coming from and I can't see where you're trying to go with it. So I just think that for me, again, I think the reality, because I think utopia is something that I think a lot of people sometimes want to kind of exist, and it's never going to be that way. Like if Black folk and white folk never got involved or intertwined with one another, there would be other issues
Certainly.
that would be perpetrating the Black community that would be
Mm-hmm.
outside of race. So it would just be within us. And so one could argue and say, yeah, that's better than what we're dealing with now. And who knows, you know what I'm saying? That could be a very valid point. But where we stand today, black people, we have the intelligence, we have the capabilities, and we have the blueprint in terms of we have people that have come before us that have fought. Because basically, the thing with turning back now is another thing, kind of saying what our ancestors did and what they went through was for nothing. They really put themselves on the line for us to be in this position today. And the work never gets easier. Like the shit, like life is never going to get easier. As soon as you knock one
Mm-hmm.
problem off, there's another one waiting right for you. That's just how it is in life. So if you're going to be a person of strong will and strong mind, this is a situation where, again, the shit is not ideal for us, and we're going to have to continue to battle. But again, I feel like politically, legislation is what we can do to change the structure of this country because, again, we've already proven we can dominate at the highest levels of this country. Again, you have a black man who was in the White House. Like I said, people can say whatever they want. They can talk about what he could and could not do. I don't think people necessarily understand what it means to be president. Hell, people don't even understand what it means to be a local government official on their level. There's a lot of education and
Mm-hmm.
informity from we're talking about the lowest income of our society. That's the other part. Like when you mentioned bringing together the top black minds to be able to bring, like, who's to say who the top black minds are? Number one, because everybody feels like they have a top black mind. You can find a nigga on the corner that's going to feel like they could tell you more about some shit than a scientist that does something that's considered an expert. You know, every black person, we all feel like we have valid points. And so what I feel like is we have to be able to say, hey, as black folk, we have to understand that, again, we are not a majority, we are a minority. And we have a lot of we have a lot of power to utilize. And if we don't utilize that power effectively, it means nothing. And that has to be kind of reiterated throughout this process because, again, if we had no examples to see that we can go as far as we have come, I'd be with you. I'd be like, fuck it, let's this shit ain't working. And this
Mm-hmm.
shit hasn't worked in terms of the racism and the bigotry, but in terms of the capitalistic society, in terms of turning out people who have been able to generate wealth and be able to, because just because like I said, saying so everybody should not know, there's nobody that should be hungry in this world. I agree with you there. But again, that's not to say that I accumulate my wealth and I'm not doing my part. LeBron James accumulates his wealth. He built a school. You know what I'm saying? There's other athletes who don't have the notoriety to do what they're to kind of put it out there, everything that every single move that they're making to help their community. But again, it's not right to kind of say, okay, this is only minimized because it's, there's
Mm-hmm.
somebody out there hurting. It's all, like I said, that's utopia. To say that there's never going to be anyone out there hurting, that's not realistic in my eyes. So I respect the opinion. I just think that we're on a path of we've been on a path of struggle. I think black people are a people of struggle, but we are people of resiliency. I mean, we are the trendsetters. I mean, you got to think we came from being slaves to being at the highest power in this country and everywhere in between. You know what I'm saying? And so our blueprint is throughout. To turn around and rebuild it or tear it down from the standpoint of like trying to create our own situation, I think is would be damaging to the history that has
Yes,
been
that's
laid
that's
before
definitely. I,
us.
I understand where you're coming from, and that's definitely an interesting perspective. And utopia definitely is not something that I think is meant to exist on this earth. If you even look at nature in itself, there's nothing utopic about nature. I mean, you have other animals that eat other animals, you know. So but what I'm saying is that the reason why this system exists, the reason why racism existed in the first place, is to perpetuate this capitalism and imperialism. So it's like either that's going to have to be cut down and to start over to build that from scratch of what we're going to actually, what capitalism is actually going to mean. Are we going to have to utilize the poor all the time? We're going to have to utilize somebody at the bottom at all times. Should that maybe be looked into to see if we can, do something else besides, utilize a part of society that's at the bottom and that is struggling, maybe that could be changed around. But I do agree with you, man. Like having the capability to come from the bottom and achieve a great amount of wealth, that's something that shouldn't be taken away from just because other people out there suffering. But I just I just think there should be something else that we can do to achieve capitalism besides utilizing the poor and utilizing basically when I say the poor, the majority of the poor, well, not really the majority of the poor, but a lot of poor people are Black and people of color. Actually, majority of poor people in America are white, but that's because of the population size. But yeah, man, it's definitely good talking to y'all, man. Just seeing these different perspectives and just like I feel like these conversations need to happen more between great Black minds. Great minds that are thinking about solutions instead of just thinking about problems. Because everybody can talk about a problem all day long, but what are the solutions to it? What can we possibly come together at to better the situation?
Like you said, man, it's kind of a great segue. Everyone be on the lookout, for the LA Report group meet. We're going to be having discussions, discussing solutions, within that group chat. So be on the lookout for that. We'll put that on our individual Instagram pages. We'll put that on the TLR or TLR podcast page as well. Because I think the next step, like you said, Randy, next step is to try to bring, Black minds together where we can brainstorm, plan, organize, mobilize in the right way. I think we have too many one-off opinions here, there, and otherwise, things get lost in the shuffle. So, we're trying to bring things into more of a centralized point, and I think this group chat will be the best way to do so. So everyone be on the lookout for that. We'll have that coming very soon. And also, as always, y'all, follow our Instagram page at TLR_podcast. We're also on YouTube at The LA Report. And we're also on Spotify at The LA Report as well. So, be sure to follow, subscribe, listen. Also, give us feedback as well. We're going to be having more guests coming on. And then we're going to go into some more things and some more innovative things for the podcast. So definitely stick with us. We're growing every day. And we definitely appreciate y'all for listening. And also, Randy,
Hey,
we
man,
appreciate you for coming on.
I appreciate the
Yes, sir.
opportunity and talking to
You know what I'm saying?
positive Black men, and it was definitely an honor to even be a part of this. I appreciate y'all.
Oh,
Okay.
no, for sure, bro.
No, appreciate you, man.
And with that said, we're going to sign off, y'all. Y'all stay blessed. You're going to go protest. Please be safe. Remember to wear your mask. COVID is still outside. Last time I checked, all right?
Peace.
So,
Peace.
love y'all. Be safe.